Hi, I'm Justin Moorman.
And I'm Katie Thornton, and this is the Re-Education of Schools podcast,
where we have open, honest conversations about how to better understand social-emotional learning, trauma-informed care, the whys behind student behavior, and how to help kids navigate it all as they go through school and life. All right, welcome back. Episode 25, What About Your Friends? Building a Team. So one of the things we know is that we have to have a team around us. Because I don't want to say you can't do this kind of work without a team, but I think it would be that much harder. I mean, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to do it without a team. So how do you, whether it's for doing trauma-informed kind of work or whether it's for just building even your school teams like that you've got around you, like what are some of the components I think that go into that and why? That's kind of what we're going to be talking about this episode, right?
Yeah, how to build yourself and surround yourself with a team. I think it's critically important right now to be in education. If you don't have a team, being by yourself super hard. But then if you're looking at trauma-informed work and some of the other things we're going to be talking about, a team for me is what's got me through and sustained the work for the time that we've been able to do it and accomplish what we have, because you have to have a team.
Well, and I think there's the relational side of it. I'm sure we'll probably talk about this, but there's a relational side of it too. And something that we harp on a lot is the importance of relationships. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should be out there doing this on an island.
Co-regulation, right? All the things we talk about, it involves other people. So whether you like them or not, you got to figure it out, right? So here we go. Here we go. So
all right. So what are let's jump in then. What are some of the components of a healthy team?
Okay, so accountability. So when you have a team, you hold each other accountable for what we said we're going to do and the expectations. Clear goals. So having clear goals of what you're wanting to accomplish as a team. Communication. I see this as the fault sometimes in teams, is that communication just isn't really clear, or people don't have forums to give open feedback loops or discussions. Celebrating success. Sometimes we get in team mode where we're always solving problems, but we're never stopping and pausing. Like, you know what really went well, though, was this, this, and this. So I think the part of the debriefing process that hopefully you're in good practice with is really talking about what is going well as much as we're talking about what we need to kind of self-correct.
Yeah.
Commitment. So people that really are there and want to be there. I think we've had this experience over the years when you have people that aren't really invested in the work or invested into the job. And those people are difficult because then you're holding their weight of their responsibilities on you as well. Yeah. And that becomes a lot. So
it does become a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So people that are equally invested into the work and the commitment for you there, ability to give feedback to each other and those safe space, like goes back to that regular debriefing, whether you're connecting after school or you're doing it through a survey if you're an administrator, or having open forums of some type of discussion, getting feedback from people so that you can see things in a different way and make those adjustments through another lens. Establish roles. So going into a team, knowing what your role or purpose on that team is, that you're not confused, or if everybody's trying to be in charge, or no one's taking notes, or you're not sure why I'm even here. That gets confusing. So I think really clear, defined roles. I know we've gone through this process. I've talked about this organization a ton, Character Strong. It's who we've done consultation work with, and they are really clear. The science behind teams is everybody has to have a clear role and expectation. So we have teams set up at school that have very specific roles and designations for those. And I'm even thinking about like our crisis response team. We have very clear rules of who's serving as an administrator, who's serving as a support person, who's serving counseling, right? So those roles are really clearly defined. It's another function and form of a team, but you have to have clear ideas of what people's roles and functions are within that. And then those interpersonal relationship piece, those micro interactions, those touch points, making time and a point to have those small conversations, to connect with each other, to do those social events, or just those informal things where it's not all work. That it is more, you start forming those somewhat of a personal connection with people, because when you are invested with each other, you're invested in the work, and your communication is so much stronger.
Yeah. It's a good list. Did you just look up a list?
I looked up several. I looked up several lists, and I picked the components.
I don't think that you could have come up with this list.
I feel like you're kind of suggesting. No, I did.
I did too. And there's a lot of this stuff is the same.
I did Google several different resources. Right, I looked through several articles and read some things, and then these are just some commonalities I found within.
That's what I did.
Yeah, several ones. We're too much on the same page, but we're just going to break that cycle.
That's a problem. Or is that one of the aspects of a good team? I don't know. Yeah, I was trying to look for some of the things that stood out that were maybe that seemed significant to me. Not that all of them weren't, but I think having like similar core beliefs about what you're doing. So you don't have to have the same core beliefs about everything. Like in life, I think it's probably important to have people that have different beliefs about various things. But as far as whatever the actual work is that you're doing, I think being on the same page and having the same kind of core ultimate belief about what you're doing is important. I've had people on teams, or seen teams around that have different, we were doing the same work. We're actually doing trying to do the same kind of work, but the core belief about how to go about it and things like that was just different. Or even what we thought the outcomes were going to be could be different. And that makes it really tough, right? So I think that that's an important part, because I think different people can accomplish kind of the different goals, the same goals, different ways. So having the same core belief doesn't mean you have to do it the exact same way. So I've got people on my team right now. I talk about this a lot as various teams are getting built at our school right now. There are people on my team that, or that I'm on a team with. It's like I own the team, but that I'm on a team with that ultimately go about things at times differently than I would. But that's okay because they still have the same core belief about why we're doing what we're doing and what our goal is. So somebody on my team doesn't have to do it the exact same way as me, as long as we're on the same page as far as like what our goal is and why we're there and things like that and what we want the outcomes to be. And that can be hard to let go of sometimes because sometimes we get stuck, again, depending on personality type especially, you can get stuck on the idea of like, well, the way I'm doing it's like the right way of doing it. And that's not necessarily like, you got to get rid of that a little bit, I think, to be able to understand that like different people are going to do it different ways. But we do have to have those same core beliefs. So I thought that was kind of important. I think respect as well, just generally respecting each other is a pretty big deal. And then I always come back to, again, the kind of Gallup Strengths Finder idea for a lot of things, because I think it's a lot of study that went into it. And I think that people really land on wanting to have that trust, compassion, stability, and hope overall. And so if you can foster that within your team, I think that makes it a lot easier to be a part of the team, and I think it makes it a place where people want to be. So I think that those are good ones. That trust, trusting each other, having compassion, being stable with each other, consistent, right, and then offering hope, right, kind of encouraging each other overall, and helping each other know that it might be a rough day, might be a rough week, whatever, but that's all it is. It's a rough day, rough week, and we're actually moving forward.
Yeah, I watched this I don't know if it was a TikTok or some kind of video. This guy was
That's where we get a lot of our information.
Yeah, real legit sources. But this guy was leading, talking about his business, like had a big legal business, right? And he had a lot of people leaving, and then he was interviewing people and saying, "Why are you leaving our organization?" Like, right?
Sure.
It came down to they had their mission and vision posted all over everything, right? But there wasn't any core beliefs going back to, and then they weren't going back to executing our core beliefs. So they were allowing customers to treat their employees a certain way, which went against their core values into the organization. And so when he finally stepped up and said, "You know what? This partnership with this person isn't fruitful for us because you go against our core beliefs," it was worth him losing $1 million contracts, and people respected him at the end, and he started regaining and rebuilding his company. But it was interesting, the idea of core beliefs, and it's one thing to have them written down, but are you actually practicing what those are on the day-to-day operations and really evaluating, is this what we're about?
Yeah. I'd rather everybody actually have the same core beliefs than even having them written down. I mean, I think there's value, obviously, in having them written down and things like that. But I would, if I had to pick between the two, like, right, let's actually be there over, let's just talk about it and check off that we've come up with what they are, but we have to actually do it. All right. So how do you build a successful team? Like, how do you go about actually creating one?
Well, I think we've done a lot of hiring over the last couple of years as we're starting to hire in and build people. And one of You have to hire members that are good fit or people fit for your team.
Yeah.
And I can't express how critically important that is. One of the things we always ask, tell us your beliefs about children. Tell your approach or views about student behavior. So the person that comes in with a real punitive answer or it seems like we're just the culture of our building is very easygoing, lighthearted, right? So someone that comes in, it's like real serious and maybe can't have some sense of humor about themselves, or, that's not going to be a good fit for us. Not that they won't be a good fit somewhere else, but really looking at, you can train all the skill sets. You can't train someone's personality type or belief systems and those kind of things. You can't change or alter those things, but you can train a lot of other things. So going down to find
somebody how to teach math,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, you can teach all those things, but I can't teach you how to necessarily believe that kids can do better if they can, right? Like I can help PD you, but if you have that core belief already coming into it, it's just the people we've hired have naturally been just such a wonderful fit for our building because we have found the right people, like instinctually about that.
How do you go about that, really? Like when you're sitting in those interviews, and I know there's a whole team of people doing those, but like what are some of the things, because it's almost like an intangible, it's not like really a checklist thing. How do you weigh that out compared to the set of questions that you have to ask or whatever? Like what do you, I don't know, like you kind of answered that, but isn't that's kind of a hard thing to do, it seems like sometimes.
It is, because you're going to set up questions, but it's really not even about the questions. It's about, do you have a sense of humor when you answer something? Are you going to take this like every experience going to be a really big deal for you? Especially when you're dealing with kids with a lot of behavioral issues, right? We've been really upfront about like, here's what you're going to see and do. How do you feel about that? Like, right?
Did it seem easy? Did the conversation seem easy?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Like, did it kind of feel natural and easy? Like, I think you have that with people that kind of fit in, and not like in a, you're excluded kind of way, but they just happen to fit in with the culture of the team that's there.
Yeah,
right?
Usually there was all the time there's an instant connection and people walk out the door, we're like, yep, that's our person. Like we've met them for 15 minutes, but have this great instinct about just their presence, their communication style, all those kind of things within there. So you just set up some questions and frameworks around your core beliefs and see how they respond. And the genuineness, I think somebody comes off. I think we're always looking for genuine people to express that. I think we've been super lucky. And to kind of work through some of those. I put cultivate trust and accountability. Don't be afraid of hard conversations when we avoid addressing things. That's really how we compound things. And then there ends up being I've seen this over the years because I've not done it perfectly. But I've seen this happen where it's like the little thing becomes like this big argument between people or a feud, but it's because we let it compound and we're not just addressing it right away. So setting up forums to do that. Take the time to dive into team building exercises. Trust falls after school.
Mirroring exercises.
Yeah.
With each other.
We're very connected now after that. This looks different for everyone, but you have to have a relationship with some capacity to work effectively as a team. Debriefing, lunch, morning touch points. I know you connect with your team first thing in the morning. That's just kind of a system you have in place. Ask for the feedback. So think whatever feels good for your team, but you have to have some type of connection time throughout the day, whether it's an after-school debriefing or whatever. Share the informational wealth. Give credit where credit is due. Nothing will burn a team faster, and it doesn't matter if it's your paraprofessional, your principal, your school counselor, your intervention specialist, whoever it is. Nothing will upset people, and it's probably a trigger point for me too. But like when you put a lot of work and systems in place, and like no one ever. Not that you do it for the credit, but at some point, like if you never acknowledge someone's skill set I've tried to really be intentional about distributed leadership and having other people host PD sessions for our building because that's where the expert knowledge is. But I think just giving people credit, like sometimes it's one of our pairs that come up with a great idea and make sure they're, thank you to blah, blah, blah for this awesome idea and feedback. They're actually starting this initiative or this idea, and they're kind of be the central point to kind of guide what it looks like. But it's hard when you steal someone's idea and rebrand it, Or if you take credit,
Sure.
like you came up with the idea. I've seen people do this before, and it's just, that's hard. So I would say celebrate everyone's contribution to the success of the team. Maybe it's somebody else that has that really good relationship and it's not you.
Yeah.
I've seen
Oh,
you
yeah.
do this before. Be like, well, it's actually not me. It's actually that other teacher
Yeah.
that did all that work. I just was there if they needed
Just along
consultation.
for the ride. Yeah.
Yeah. So foster healthy culture and that welcomes constructive conflicts. So if we need to have some debate about things and we're not always going to agree, but healthy debate is good. I think the three of us, just our work dynamics, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's good. It's healthy. There will be conflict, and then do you have a format for feedback, for change, for adjustments that will establish growth?
Yeah.
So that's my list.
I think it's, I found this kind of a tough question. Again, I, of course, just Googled it, right? Like, and I always actually thought it was funny because there were like a bunch that was like 3 things to building a good team, and then like 7 things to building a good team, 5 things to building a good team, 9 things to building a good team.
Did you come up with
like,
Did you come up with one to be like
No,
real
I didn't.
innovative?
I didn't.
Okay.
No, that would have been fun though. Do this one thing and you'll build a good team.
Yeah, I'm gonna beat all
And then
of
I would have
these.
left out like a bunch of them. Apparently, like it was like 14. It went up to like 14 at one point.
Yeah.
Make your list smaller, people, is what I'm saying. Google? I don't know who I'm saying that to. Everyone that makes a list. Some of the things that I heard you say, and that also I found, things like trust, having trust within the team is incredibly, incredibly important.
And so I think when you say trust, when someone shares a vulnerable experience or struggle they're having, when someone else, and I've seen this happen, somebody else goes and tells somebody else, as in a
Sure.
way to gossip almost about
Sure.
it, or unintentional gossip where you're like, hey, then you've kind of broke their trust when you tell their story for them.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I've seen that happen a lot, and I've also been guilty of it, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think
Yeah, I think that's important. I think there's also like not feeling like if you are in a spot where I am, right? I'm in a spot where there's I have a little bit more authority maybe over some of the other members on our team. Like as far as like some of the aides that I work with and things like that, they would defer to me, I guess is what I'm saying. And not like I'm in charge of them necessarily, but to be able to, like, the amount that I try to trust them. Now I do that based off of the relationship I have with them, and I just trust them anyway. But there are times they'll ask me things that I'm like, well, what do you think, and how do you want to do it? Like, or I trust your judgment. Like, I trust your judgment to make a call on that. Like, you don't have to run every single thing you do by me, or you don't have to, wait for my okay to make a call. Like, I trust that you'll make good decisions and things like that. I think that kind of stuff goes a long way. Also, there's just no way I could be a part of every decision that's being made. I mean, that's just a leadership thing in general. At anywhere, right? If you're a leader and you're like hyper involved in every single decision that's being made, like, you're probably not doing it well, like, because you should be surrounding yourself with people that you trust and that can make good decisions. I think having like diversity of the team, whether that's like, you don't want everybody just to be the same. I think there is so much value in having like diversity. I think back to, again, where I was working before and talking to somebody about what made the place I was at work well during the time that I was working there. And one of the things that this one guy brought up, he's like, I love that we have frequently people of different ages that are paired up with each other, and people of different genders that are paired up with each other, and people of different ethnic backgrounds that are paired up with each other.
And I would say physical abilities too.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
All of these things, right? Because there's value in not having and having different perspectives, and having kids watch and have it modeled to them how different people who have differences can all get along and still work towards the same goals and things like that. Yeah,
we just talked about that. We had like a round of hiring, and we were really talking about diversifying our team.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't want 3 of the same. Like, that's not going to help and support our kids the best. That we need people in different areas of strengths.
Yes.
To kind of collaboratively make this like super team that really at any point can support kids in some capacity.
Yeah.
So really went in intentionally looking at that, like, what is this team? Like, we might need to hire somebody a little bit older because we have all young people on this side of the team, that we might need some more experience or just more life experience to kind of help and support some things. And really just looking at the diversity of the teams. I agree with you. It's can put that down, but that's important.
Yeah, I think different skill sets, right? Like, because I've got, again, even just within my real small, like immediate team for the unit that I work in I've got a team member that's probably much more compassionate, like way soft-spoken, does a great job with some of those things. Probably a little bit less likely if things get really physically intense to be the one to jump in, but that's okay because we've got other team members that would be able to handle that part of it. And there, it's just like finding those and then utilizing those team members well. I think I talk about that later maybe, but I think that's pretty important too, is like understanding what the strengths are of your team and then playing to those, right? Like play to the strengths of the team members. Don't try to like shoehorn in somebody into one spot that they're not comfortable with or that their skill set doesn't lend itself to.
I think it goes back to, I know we talk about Enneagram a lot. That's just the personality type that we kind of committed to, but there's lots of them out there. But we talked through the Enneagram personality type, and I think you were like supporting a school one time, and mostly everybody on that team was a 9.
Yeah.
So like that team, like as they were building, like nobody was a really good decision maker.
Yeah.
On that team. So that was the principal was like kind of wondering why that team was struggling. It was like, well, because you mostly
we talked about it. Yeah. We were talking about it. I was like, well, I mean, I don't think that none of them want to make a decision or especially because they're all making so many individual decisions all day long.
Yeah.
To then have to make a decision that they feel like impacts more than just them was too much. And I remember she even said, she was like, well, maybe I just start making, maybe one of the things I can do for them is start making some of those decisions.
Yeah.
And then just asking if they're
not
okay
that
with
it's
the
a
decision
wrong group of people.
Like,
yeah.
That'd be a great idea. I'm sure they'd appreciate that.
Yeah. So looking, I think, even at personality types, if you have a lot of 8s on a team, that would be really hard. Really hard. Or a lot of 3s, it would be exhausting, right? So you got to look at some of those personality dynamics to kind of balance that out too.
Yeah, 3s are exhausting. So.
But we're so effective.
Oh, you're a 3. I forgot. Yeah. So I think I think also like having them like finding ways to foster like emotional intelligence too. I think that's a pretty big deal as you build a team. If you want people, it's a people business, 100% that we're working with. And if you start talking about like the idea of working with adults, that's important. Obviously, it's important with kids, but I think having people that have like a solid emotional intelligence and that kind of high EQ is pretty important. I mean, you can have people that are really smart and know how to do all the things, right? But if they are really terrible with
regulation,
struggle with like people and how to like regulate with people, all those things, like or you have to at least know that about them and, make adjustments as you go.
Yeah, I would agree. Their stress response system is constantly triggered. It's really hard to keep kids regulated if you're spending a lot of your energy regulating your colleague, and that's time taken away from regulating a kid.
Sure.
That's also not a fruitful, so your team's spending a lot of energy as if there's another student, like almost on your caseload. Yeah. Like somebody's gonna have to go talk to her, somebody's gonna have to go regulate her, you know what I mean? And we're already dealing with dysregulated kids. You kind of need people that kind of have the same level-headedness and emotional intelligence to be able to know not to take things personally and how to get in that good spot.
Yeah. Some that I didn't necessarily find on a list, but that I mean, I'm sure they're on a list somewhere, but that I just had thought about on my own.
Original
I made my own list. I don't know why I'm saying.
So this is your number. This is your one thing. Go ahead.
There's more than one of them.
Okay.
So here's 5 things that you could do. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's also a high importance on like you working incredibly hard to be good at what you do. Mm-hmm. Like, right. You want people that are hard workers, but I think that starts with you. If you're part of the person that's helping build a team, if you have some kind of say in that, I think also being a person that works just really hard doesn't mean you have to like sell out your whole life to just doing your job. I mean, we talked plenty about how that's a terrible idea in previous episodes, but I think work really hard, be a hard worker, and expect yourself to do well at what you're doing.
Your team should not be compensating for your lack of follow through, right?
Yeah, like they should be able to look at you and be like, they're working really
trust.
hard.
I think ultimately, we've seen this happen. You have, especially with kids in crisis, people have to trust that you know what to do, that you've got it, and that your confidence is in you. And so if people can't look at you and feel that way, then it feels unsafe and real fast. Yeah. So I think I agree with you.
I also think like kindness is a big deal. Like really I mean, I know we have like, we've talked about, respect and trust and things like that, but I think it's like a slight difference, maybe a little shift in like that idea of just being really kind and having people that are really kind on the team. I
like
think
how they talk and address people.
Yeah, and just even in action as well, right? I think in a lot of different ways, but like really that makes a gigantic difference in how people feel about things and how people respond and how much people are willing to, I hate to say work for you because again, that's not really my situation, but I
Work with
think
you.
how, yeah, people are willing to work with you, right? If you're really prioritizing kindness and putting that way up there, I think that's big. And then I think if you're in more of like a leadership spot, I think not backing away from like the hardest thing, whatever the hardest thing is that's coming up for your team, don't keep passing off the hardest thing. Like be willing to be the one that's like, hey, this is the hardest thing that's coming up, and I'm going to do that. Like even if it's not what I would normally do, like I'm going to be willing to do that thing so that no one else necessarily has to. I think there's value in that, right?
Absolutely.
For the team. And then I think it's also just important. This is on all kinds of other lists. This isn't a me thing. The other ones are too. Make it sound weird now. But I think just know how you're measuring your effectiveness too. Like I don't think if you don't know how do you know if you're being successful if you don't know how you're going to be measuring how effective you are?
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah. Are your systems in place? Are your systems running? You know, or is it every day seems like you're putting out a fire every day, or are you having pretty successful steady days where people kind of know the systems and you're putting those plans in place to model? Like it feels pretty regulated most days.
Yeah.
I think that's always a good, and things come up and need to debrief and kind of change or whatever. But Simon Sinek does a lot of leadership work. I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on some of his stuff, but the whole idea is like leaders eat last, right? You should take care of everybody else on your team before you start serving yourself. And that some of that is, I know when I was a low incident teacher, I first one up, we had to change a kid. I'll do it. But there's a lot of people that I had encountered or worked with in that realm of student population where people would be like, oh no, I always have my paras. I don't change kids.
Yeah, sure.
No, if you feel like the work's beneath, like, you know what I mean? Like you first one up to be like, I've got it. You don't do it. I'll do it today.
Yeah.
Like to take it on for the team, or when some of those crisis situation happens, if you're the team leader, you should be the one. I've got it. Not that you don't have somebody write it out with you, because you do have to model. Like, can't always be you.
Yeah, and I mean, and you want to build capacity for your team and all those things. It's not that you're never having your team do things. I think that's different. That would be different. Mm-hmm. That would not be great. I think, but I do think that there's an importance of being willing to be the person that's doing like the hardest thing or the least desirable thing. Yeah. Because again, not that you'll always even be able to be that person, but I think that holds a lot of weight. All right, what if there's somebody that you can't seem to get them on board?
Never happens. That's weird.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're going to have a whole episode on that. So I think first starting, it's just like kids, meet the zone of proximal development, meet them where they're at. What is their scope of comfort or known? And kind of nudge forward from that piece. Celebrate what is going right. So be intentionally 5-to-1 positive to negative. Intentionally, like, don't always go down and talk when there's a problem. Go down and talk and be like, hey, I love how you had that conversation with that kid today. I saw you really put a lot of effort into, I've had to be intentional about writing like notes of gratitude or dropping off things, or that's just kind of like my love language of expression, but like really being intentional, like, you know what, this year's gone so well because you have spent the time to do X, Y, and Z. I think that does matter when people feel, you start building people's confidence. I think a lot of it comes back to lack of confidence and they're feeling like they have the ability to do it. I agree with that. And then build relationships with people. Again, always goes back to relationships, and then inform them without being a know-it-all. I think that's a fine line sometimes. Like, it can
be a tough one. Yeah.
Yep. But I think just getting education in people's hands and a space where it doesn't seem like you know it all, and keep the yet mentality. They aren't there yet. They'll get there. We've seen it over years. People have, and sometimes people just have rough spots. We're talking about getting out of the rough patch. They kind of cross the line over there, and right now they're in that rough patch, but they will come back over. Yeah. We've seen people do that all the time, but this one's hard. So they will get there in some capacity. Just hang in there with them. It's not always easy. And then don't feel like you have to own them not being there. Yeah. It's hard because you feel like you have to fix it right away, and it's not always yours to own.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think persistence and consistency are both pretty important. Sticking with it, right? Not just writing people off too quickly. I think that could be hard to do, especially when we want to move forward, but I think that's important. Again, relationships, and I think genuine relationships, right? Don't try to build a relationship with somebody for like a reason. If your reason is to try to get them on board and like to accomplish your goal, like that's kind of like that's not nearly as real, right? Like actually take the time to get to know somebody, and it doesn't mean you have to be their best friend, but like you take the time to actually get to know them.
I think it's important to measure too, because a work relationship, that's an okay relationship to have.
Yeah.
You don't need to be texting them at night or like catching up for dinner or going out on Saturday night or doing events together, right? They don't have to be a part of your inner real life circle, but there has to be some capacity of a working professional relationship.
Yes.
And there's some genuine care and that kind of stuff with that. So I think some people misinterpret that as we've got to hang out together.
Yeah, that's all I can do. But no, I think like, again, a whole episode on relationship building. Go back and listen to that. I'm sure there's stuff in there that could apply. Don't take things personally too. I think like you've got to try to keep how you feel out of it a little bit, which is hard depending on who you are.
Yeah.
I probably have a little bit less of a hard time with that than some other people. Or at least it's delayed a lot with me. But I think don't take it personally if it's somebody's not getting on board. It's not necessarily about you. I think you kind of mentioned that as well already. Mm-hmm. And then I also think, and this is a hard one too, but I think know when to call it and be like, this isn't the right person for the team. And that's a hard one to do, but there was a person in a previous life of mine, where I was working, and I was kind of, part of my job was to like train and kind of mentor and bring along some of the staff. And, I mean, just the amount of hours I logged with this person trying to like get them, just kind of make some moves forward. And about a little over halfway through the year, I remember going to ultimately my supervisor and being like, hey, like, I don't know. I think we need to probably start thinking about like, what does this look like for this person not to be back? Like, and so, and again, going back to some of the previous ones we said, like I a little bit took it, not personally, but like I like almost like I had failed a little bit. Like I couldn't get them there. But the reality is sometimes there's people that just aren't the right fit, and that's okay. But you have to, it's always hard to know like how that balance of like when to keep pushing, staying persistent, and when to be like, all right, like it's
always a good conversation to say, I'm going to support you on where you feel like you need to grow and go.
How are we going to do that?
Was that me last year? You had that conversation? I don't know. Okay.
No. All right. How do you keep a team going and functioning in the really hard times, though? Because there's going to be hard times that the teams run into, no matter what you're doing, no matter what area you're working in. So how do you keep a team moving?
Yeah, this is the hard part when you go into education. No teacher college preps you on how to. Hardest part about being a special education teacher your first year is managing a team.
Yeah,
there's no teacher college prep work on how to manage or communicate or get effective teams up and running, and that's essentially your job. And same with a general education teacher, you have all these people in your room working, organizing. Yes. They don't talk about this, so shout out to the colleges out there. Maybe that's something we need to start addressing, is start building people's capacity. If in some essence you're a leader,
how to actually work with adults, and manage a team.
Yeah, these are just things that I did, especially as both as a low incident teacher and as a general classroom teacher, and things I try to do as a principal, which is a little bit harder because it's a much bigger team that I'm responsible of. Right, you're looking at 60 people instead of 6, right? Sure. But notes of gratitude, I always made sure every month I wrote a note of gratitude or a little something for everybody that supported me in my classroom. So always gave them their own space. So if you people working inside your classroom space, nothing worse than walking in and not knowing. Give them a sense of belonging. Like, here's your part of the countertop. You make it your own. You put your pictures up. I always made sure people had a workspace and a mailbox and place. It sounds silly, but it makes a huge difference.
No, yeah,
people have a space they can go to. Talking about the hard times, don't avoid it. So not addressing the big elephant in the room. You could feel the tension in the room. And it's hard to be like, let's just sit down and talk about it. And you're going to hear things you don't want to hear. But that's how you're going to grow and improve.
Important. Yep.
Being real about what's going on and not, I am guilty of this, that false positivity. It'll be fine. It's going to be fine. Sometimes it's not fine, and it's okay to admit that it's not going well.
Yeah.
Breaking the complaining loop, get action items in place. Like, it hasn't been good for 2 days. Okay, but what are we doing day 3? Like, we're not going to sit here and complain about it for the whole school year.
Yeah, we can't keep doing this for 3 straight weeks.
Yeah, then you just build a whole toxic cycle.
Yeah, let's adjust.
Yeah, acknowledge other people's feelings. We talk about this with kids. You may not feel like it's going bad, but this other person does. Okay, I hear that you're saying you do this really good reflective language type thing. We could probably talk about that more.
And it doesn't mean that either person's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to feel how you're going to feel. And I think that's important, like, because people feel unjustified in their, or, they feel like they have to justify. So everybody has to think it's bad.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like this is going poorly and I don't have a good feeling about it, but other people seem fine. So now I've got to, like, either I'm wrong or they're wrong. And I've got to try to prove that they should be feeling the way I'm feeling. Well, that's not the case. Or they seem to feel like it's going really poorly. It can go the opposite way too. I feel like it's going well. I need to, like, convince them that it's going well, even though they're feeling this other way. And I think it's always a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah, nobody's going to win on that one. Make adjustments, honor feedback, know when to tap out and not address things. So sometimes I think, especially when you're dysregulated, I am guilty about this. I'm getting better. That is not the time. Like, if you're not in a good headspace, just know it's a time, like, I'm going to just pick up my stuff and leave today.
Yeah.
That I'm actually not going to stay and debrief for the team because I can't stay regulated through the conversation.
Yeah, sure.
So I think know when to tap out or have somebody come in and facilitate, lean on your team. Sometimes you need to tap out to another administrator, another teacher that can help facilitate or go talk to somebody. You utilize that a lot. Bring in support, that outside perspective. I think just think about when maybe you're not the person. You just need somebody else to come in and help you along with it. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that for me, something that's just always been interesting for me is just studying people, right? And you do that, like, by sitting around watching people, that's fine. But actually, like, reading, listening to, a podcast that somebody that you're interested in that is like a really great leader, a really good team member or whatever. I think there is a lot of value in that, studying just people in general, but also studying, like, those great leaders. And they don't have to be in your field at all. Just people who have made it through adversity. Because I think that's, like, the prep work. It's kind of all the stuff you would do ahead of time. One of the things you could do ahead of time so you're not just floundering when your team is going through hard times, because you've taken time to listen to, and it can sound potentially a little hokey, but, like, even, like, sports stars, right? People that are in, like, high leverage, intense kind of feeling situations, like, or celebrities who have made it through, like, crazy things, like, in their life. And now they've got a book out, and you go read that and hear how they've made it through some of those things, or hearing, like, even, like, people in, like, horrific situations and, like, war heroes, like, all kinds of things like that, explorers, you name it. But people that have been in extreme situations and have made it out on the other side and what they learned from that, I think that there's a lot of value in studying that, and learning how they've made it through adversity, and then you pull from that what you can. I think a person that I think motivational kind of stuff is really good to listen to, not like fake whatever, but like, for example, like, I love listening to, watching, reading Bear Grylls, right? Guy has, like, a unique ability to be able to, like, really connect with people quickly, but also has had, just if you read any of his story, so Bear Grylls, if you ever want to be on our podcast and share, you're welcome to. 'Cause I'm sure that's what's going to happen. But he has, like, a lot of interesting stories about people coming through and overcoming just a kind of real significant adversity, and then what you take from that, what he's taken from that, from their stories, and you can read some of their stories and see what you can take from that. But I think there's just such importance in that, because then all of a sudden you can start to recognize that, like, how, especially if you start looking into stories that are maybe a lot more intense than whatever you're going through in a school setting, like, you start to be able to put into perspective. You're like, well, yeah, this is important and it's kind of intense, but it's not nearly as intense as whatever, so people have made it through way worse. Like, we can do this. But you can start to also pick up on, like, what people do, and there's some consistency with what people do in really tough situations that are great leaders. I think we just quote that he had when I was reading through something. So again, hashtag Bear Grylls, I guess. But he said, when you're going through tough times, talking about it like team going through tough times, he said, just keep moving forward, however slow. Positive action changes everything. So make it a conscious decision to do this regardless of your feelings. In the face of adversity, hold on to a winning attitude, humility, resilience, courage, determination, selflessness, cheerfulness, all those things make a big difference. But that idea of like continuing to move forward in some capacity, even if it's slow, what you don't want to do is start sitting still or start going backwards.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're in those tough times as a team, I think that's really important. Like, continue to move forward, even if you're not moving forward nearly as fast as what you'd like to. Even if your plan was to implement this thing by Christmas and you're not going to implement it until next Christmas. Like, now, like it has shifted, and like that's okay. But that doesn't mean you stop doing it. It means you just do it a lot slower, or the progress with the tough student in your class, or what, you name it, whatever it is. Be willing to adjust. Keep moving forward, though, like in some capacity.
Yeah, what you don't want to do is create a failure because you feel like you need to implement a timeline.
Yes. Yeah.
We've seen that burn and crush.
Yeah.
Real hard.
All right, so what do you want people to walk away knowing?
All right, but this work is way too hard to do alone. And I can't reiterate that enough. You have to have a team, a functioning team with systems in place. When people know what to do, have clear communication, play into each other's strengths, and feel valued, that is where the magic happens. And that's where you can really do some great work. Look at each other with equal value and keep the team moving forward for growth and improvement for kids. Work hard, and you have to play hard.
Yeah. That's good. I think that I just want people to walk away remembering that you have to have people around you, no matter what you're doing in life, whether it's just living your life, whether it's working, at a school, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You need to surround yourself with people more and more and more and more and more. I hear that and I believe that wholeheartedly. We are too isolated as people, especially kind of in the West. It's kind of a thing that we're struggling with, and hopefully that we're coming out of a little bit more. But surround yourself with people, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, but surround yourself with people that you believe in and trust and things like that. Build those relationships. And then I really think if you want to be good at leading and building a good team, I really do think you should spend time studying people that have also done it.
Yeah.
I really think there's value in that. And so be a studier of people. That'd be what I encourage people to do. Well, as always, we appreciate you guys coming and joining in the conversation with us, hanging out, talking a little bit about building teams. Hopefully, if you're in a spot where you're getting ready to try to build a team, or you have recently built a team and you're looking for something
evaluate your team.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Maybe share this with somebody. Maybe listen to this as a team and talk through what you agree with, talk through what you're like they were wrong. Come to a consensus, though, as a team. That'd be great. And then maybe that'll be a team building exercise. But we just appreciate you jumping in. Again, share the video. Share the podcast with somebody that might value it. And as always, let's go out there and do the work.
Let's go do it.
Hey, everybody, let's keep the conversation going.
Like and subscribe below and keep the comments rolling.